Welcome, class, to A Beginner's Guide to Splatoon. This is a comprehensive guide by me, Mona, a low-level competitive player that is a beginner competitively, for complete beginners at Splatoon to learn the fundamentals of the game. I don't claim to know everything, so if you're higher level than me or otherwise want to share your opinion, feel free to in the comments below. There will be chapters labeling all the different parts of the presentation, so feel free to skip ahead to whatever you want to see. And with that, let's begin. What the hell is a Splatoon? Splatoon is a third-person turf shooter developed by Nintendo that initially released on May 28, 2015 and spawned two sequels, Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3. The game follows a race of futuristic squid people called Inklings that have evolved to mimic the appearance and attitudes of modern-day humans. They are our successors in every way, from their mannerisms to the mistakes their society continuously repeats. The Inklings live their days carefree, watching concerts, engaging in sports, and other needless activities which will be discussed in time. The goal of this slideshow is to help newcomers understand the appeal of Splatoon by being as thorough yet brief as possible. It will be split into 5 parts: the vibes, the lore, the gameplay, the events, and the community. What each part explains should be self-explanatory. The slideshow will mostly be focused on the third game as it's the most recent Splatoon game and the one I have the most experience in. Part 1. The vibes. Splatoon is a very pretty game, and a large contributor to that is its messy aesthetics and underground influence. Everything is overwhelmingly detailed, but intricately put together in a way where you never really feel it, and every piece of the environment is still readable in gameplay. Another important aspect of this series' charm is how time in-game moves in real time. From the release of Splatoon 1 to now, 9 years have passed in real time, and the same is true for the games. There are many in-universe explanations for things happening, such as stage reworks, balance patches, and special events that make sense given the passage of time. A big consequence of time in-game moving in real time is that everything has a reason for being the way it is. Lore bits that may seem simple on the surface stretch back very far in history, sometimes even back to our times. Part 2. The lore. These are the major players in Splatoon. There's Callie and Marie, Pearl and Marina, and Shiverfry and Big Man, who are all idol groups. Along with these three, a deep cut being a bandit trio as well. This is Craig Cuttlefish, a war hero from hundreds of years ago, DJ Octavio, the main antagonist, and the agents, the playable characters that work under Craig Cuttlefish. We can't delve much deeper into the vibes without intersecting the lore, so consider this your spoiler warning. Once again, there are chapters in the description, feel free to skip ahead if you so desire. Yes, if it wasn't obvious already, Splatoon takes place in a post-apocalyptic future. Humanity is dead, the Inklings aren't just there to live with humans but completely replace them, and a large part of the Splatoon lore is about the Inklings repeating humanity's mistakes, as briefly mentioned earlier. The first and largest instance of the Inklings repeating humanity's mistakes is the Great Turf War. Along with the Inklings, another race known as the Octarians, future Octopodes, also exists. DJ Octavio was their leader and Cuttlefish was the leader of the Inklings. Due to rising water levels, land was scarce, so the Inklings and Octarians fought a war to determine who would be the ruling species. The Inklings won and cast the Octarians underground for a long time. The story of the first 2 games features a young Inkling storming the Octarians' underground bases. On the way, you may find items called Sunken Scrolls, which deepen the lore of the series and bring light to the fact that your mission may not be as heroic as once thought. Instead, from an objective standpoint, the story is about the perpetuation of fear and terror. In the end, nothing meaningful really happens at all as you beat down the leader of the Octarians again. The third game in the series is much more lighthearted. When faced with a larger threat, the Squid Sisters, Deep Cut, Cuttlefish, and Octavia all band together to take down a larger threat. There, the relationship between the former leader of the Inklings and Octarians begin to heal, ending the current arc of the series. Nobody knows what's on the table for Splatoon 4, and a large reason is that the future is in the hands of the players. At the end of every Splatoon game's life cycle, an event is held to determine a major aspect of the next game. Splatoon 3 is not done with content yet, and as such there are very scattered expectations on what Splatoon 4 could be. Part 3. The gameplay. Okay, so the lore's cool, whatever. What's it like to play the dang game? Splatoon 3 has a lot of game modes, meaning there's a very wide variety of things to do, but it can also be a bit overwhelming to get into. This section will briefly cover every game mode Splatoon 3 has to offer. Before we get into the game modes though, let's begin with the gameplay. The game, as mentioned during the overview, is a turf shooter. You play as an Inkling or Octoling and are tasked with doing some sort of objective. You use your weapon to both paint the ground with ink and fight enemies. Along with that, you can transform into a squid to move faster, climb walls, regenerate ink, and dip into the ink to hide. The game is fast and frantic, yet intuitive. In Splatoon 3, there are 11 different weapon classes and enough main weapons that you can basically play any playstyle you desire. Along with that, each main weapon comes with a sub-weapon and special weapon that can provide utility or extra firepower. Here are some examples. Hero Mode is Splatoon 3's main story mode. Travel through Alterna, humanity's final civilization, and uncover the truth behind a mysterious rocket resting on the center of the land. Complete several mission objectives in a non-linear fashion and make your way up towards the rocket. Once you go online, the first mode you'll be faced with is Turf War. This is a 4 vs 4 player vs player mode where the goal is to ink the most ground as possible. Whichever team has the most turf covered by the end of 3 minutes wins. This mode is fast, frantic, chaotic, and cathartic all at once, and it's great for new players since only the last minute of the match really matters. After every match of Turf War, you gain EXP that goes towards your player level. Once reaching level 10, you can play ranked matches, aka Anarchy Battles as it's called in-game. These are more serious game modes with more cumulative and centered objectives. These can be played in open mode, where you play one match and gain or lose ranked based on results, or series mode, where you play until you get 5 wins or 3 losses, and gain or lose rank based on performance. Work for Grizzco, a shady company run by the mysterious Mr. Grizz. Take down salmonids in this player versus enemy mode to harvest golden eggs and further his agenda. Every wave, you get 1 random weapon from a pool of 4, and every time you complete 3 waves in a row, you'll gain rank and rewards. This will increase the hazard level, making future waves harder and harder. Occasionally, you'll also encounter a 4th extra wave where you have to down a king salmonid. If you need a change of pace, you can always try Tableturf Battle. Battle AI are real opponents in a card game rendition of Turf War. Each card has a different pattern that inks different spaces. Acting as the secondary story mode in DLC for Splatoon 3, Side Order turns Splatoon into a roguelike. Traverse up 30 floors of a huge spiraling tower, powering up your weapons along the way. Embrace chaos and stop the world from succumbing to everlasting order, even if that means dying multiple times to see your goals met. Part 4. The Events. Splatoon is host to a variety of special limited time events. There are events for basically every PvP and PvE mode the game has to offer, and this section will go through all of them. The least celebrated but most varied event challenges or Turf War ranked games with a twist. These twists can be just about anything, from random loadouts to faster swim speed to completely overhauling aspects of certain weapons. Splatfests are events where a theme is announced, a question is asked, and you have to defend your answer by playing Turf War. These normally last for 1 weekend, though occasionally tournament Splatfests are held that required multiple Splatfests to be played in succession, and each game's final Splatfest is handled differently. During Splatfests, the way Turf War works is changed slightly. You play during the night and are equipped with fizz bangs, free to use bombs that you gain by killing opponents or getting killed. After the match ends, you gain a number of clout depending on your performance, which is the primary metric that determines which team wins the Splatfest. There are rare circumstances where you queue into a 10 times, 100 times, or 333 times battle, which gives you magnitudes more clout for winning. In Splatoon 3, there are 3 Splatfest teams, and at the beginning of Day 2, Tricolor Turf War begins. This is an asymmetric 4 vs 2 vs 2 battle. The 4-player team in the center is tasked with inking the most turf and defending the Ultra Single in the center of the map. The 2 2-player teams are also trying to ink the most turf, but are also attempting to steal the Ultra Signal, which grants them a steady stream of paint to make up for the player deficit. If either 2-player team wins, both win, otherwise the 4-player team wins. Switching over to Salmon Run, occasionally there will be rotations that can grant you any weapon. There's also a chance of getting a rare Grisco variant of a weapon with souped up strats but extremely inefficient ink usage. Gold and Wildcard Rotations only grant rare weapons. Eggstra Work is a seasonal event where you have the option of queuing into a second Salmon Run rotation, where there are 5 waves instead of 3 and there is no randomness. The hazard level starts at a set amount too, but can climb higher depending on how many golden eggs your team scores each wave. Scoring in the top 50%, 20%, and 5% bracket at the end of the event grants a special reward. Occasionally, the Salmonids will invade the city and begin a big run. Like the Splatfests, it lasts 1 weekend. During a big run, you play Salmon Run in a PvP stage and are given double rewards for defeating King Salmonids. Like Eggstra Work, you get an extra reward at the end for hitting a certain egg threshold, but it's a static rather than being determined by a percentile. Splatoon 3 is just about to end its content cycle, and thus its final Splatfest and final big run are happening in September. Future is uncertain for this series, but nevertheless it's an extremely hyped time to be in the community. All we can do now is wait and see what happens. Part 5. The Community. The Splatoon community is huge in Japan, but not so much in other regions of the world. This leads to this neat dynamic where despite the fact that the community as a whole is huge, you can get large mileage with a small following and everyone in your region knows each other. If you're willing to break out of that bubble though, there are plenty more Splatoon fans to find out there. There are a lot of artists and creatives in the Splatoon fandom. Any type of content you crave, someone will provide. There are several artists, musicians, content creators, and the like that are all inspired by Splatoon to drive their creative endeavors. Since the community is pretty small in the West, many of these artists are on the smaller side as well. There is no one big Splatoon artist out there that everyone in the community follows. Splatoon is women-led, and there are a lot of implied and canon queer characters in Splatoon. Marina and Pearl are implied to be in a lesbian relationship. A friend of theirs, Oct, is canonically non-binary. Sivir's gender is female in the English translation, but up to interpretation in other languages. The Inklings canonically abolished gender in Splatoon 3. Given the large cast of queer characters, there is no question that the fandom isn't opposed to queer people being a part of the community. The Splatoon community is very good at efficiently ousting bad people from their fandom. Unlike other communities where large figureheads are basically immune from controversy, you really have to prove yourself to stay on good terms with the Splatoon community. As an example, recently there was a top-level purge where several of the game's best players were outed as racists. And unlike a lot of communities where many would back away, most people that were outed admitted to doing what they did. For the top-level players that remained, watching the game at its highest level of performance is just really fun. There's a flow to the game like no other that makes it as interesting to watch as it is to play. Since the ranked modes are 4v4s, the competitive scene has a large emphasis on coordination. Watching a plan go through successfully as the map is slowly converted from one color to another is infinitely satisfying. This was an overview of everything Splatoon, made to be as brief but thorough as possible. Of course, it's a bit difficult to be brief when there's so much in one game, but I hope you enjoyed the presentation anyways. Any questions? Leave them in the comments. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.